When my sweet wife passed away, I felt like the world had stopped turning. I really believe that saying goodbye to her at the funeral was the hardest thing I would ever have to do. We were married for 40 wonderful years, and she was my best friend, but I was wrong about that being the worst part. Only 3 days after we said our final goodbyes, our family sat down to hear her last wishes. That was when everything I knew fell apart. My son, the boy I had raised with so much love, was given a very fancy home in the big city of Los Angeles. It was a giant apartment worth more than $5 million. And me, after spending 40 years being a loyal husband, I was left a broken down, messy old farm in the middle of nowhere. It felt like a giant mistake. My name is Richard, and I am 67 years old. For more than 30 years, I worked very long days, sometimes stay at my job for 18 hours straight. I built a business that built houses and roads from absolutely nothing but hard work and my own sweat. Because I wanted my family to have a good life, I missed many birthdays and stayed away during family vacations. I even remember sleeping in the front seat of my cold truck during scary winter storms just to make sure the work got done. Every single penny I earned was for my family. My wife, Margaret, was always the person who took care of our money and paid the bills. I trusted her with everything we had. Our son, Daniel, had always been a little bit different from us. He was very spoiled and often acted like he was much more important than everyone else. But Margaret always tried to look out for him. She would gently say, "Richard, please be patient. He is just young. He will grow up and learn soon." But that day when he grew up never really came. Even though he was 28 years old, Daniel had never worked a real job in his entire life. Instead of working, he spent his time driving very fast cars, wearing watches that cost more than a house, and going to parties for rich people. Somehow, all those expensive bills always ended up being paid by Margaret. Then, our lives changed forever when she found out she had a very bad sickness called cancer. It was a very strong kind of cancer that had already spread. Margaret fought so hard for 11 long, painful months. I spent every night sleeping in those hard, uncomfortable hospital chairs just to be near her. I had to watch the woman I loved slowly get weaker and weaker. Right before she left us for good, she reached out and grabbed my hand. Her voice was very small and hard to hear. She whispered, "Richard, promise me you will go to the farm." I didn't understand why she wanted me to go there, but before I could ask her any questions, she was gone. 3 days later, a lawyer asked US to come to his office to read Margaret's final letter, which is called a will. I didn't expect anything special, because we had built our whole life together as a team. The lawyer put on his glasses and started reading the papers in a serious voice. He said, "To my dear son, Daniel, I leave my big apartment in the city. It is worth $5 million. As soon as Daniel heard that, a big smile grew on his face. He looked very happy and proud of himself. Then the lawyer kept reading the rest of the papers. "To my husband, Richard, I leave the old family farm outside of Willow Creek." The whole room went very quiet. Daniel actually laughed out loud at me. He called the farm a pile of junk and said it had been empty and rotting for many years. That very same night, my own son looked at me with eyes that had no love in them at all. He called me a useless old man and told me I had to leave our house and never come back. I got into my old car and drove a long way to that broken-down farm. I thought I would only stay there for one night because I had nowhere else to go. But when I finally pushed open that creaky, old wooden door, I actually stopped breathing for a second because I was so surprised. The inside of the house looked nothing like the outside. Someone had fixed everything and made it look brand new. There were shiny wood floors, beautiful new furniture, and a kitchen with everything a person could need. Sitting right there on the table was a single envelope with my name written on it. My hands were shaking like leaves as I opened the letter from my wife. It said, "Richard, if you are reading this, then Daniel has finally shown you who he really is inside." I knew this day would come. I watched him become very greedy over the years. He only used me to get money and only acted like he loved us so he could get what he wanted. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the final test of kindness. Margaret's letter continued. I needed to see if there was any kindness left in his heart, so I made this final test. The fancy apartment in the city is not legally his yet. Margaret told me in the letter that 3 years ago, she found out Daniel was trying to steal our whole company by writing her name on papers when he wasn't allowed to. She had hired special helpers to watch him and find proof of what he was doing. The apartment would only belong to Daniel if he chose to be a good and kind person for 30 days. If he showed that he was greedy, if he was mean to me, or if he left me behind to suffer, everything would automatically come back to me. Margaret wrote, I know our son very well, and I know exactly what he will do. Suddenly, I heard a car pull into the driveway. It was Daniel. He came running to the door, screaming and looking very angry. I opened the door very calmly and showed him the letter. I told him the truth about what his mother had done. Daniel's face turned white like a ghost. He tried to jump forward and grab the letter out of my hands. But suddenly, bright blue and red police lights started flashing in the driveway. Margaret had planned for this part, too. The special helper she had hired a long time ago had given all the proof of Daniel stealing to the police officers. The police put him in the back of their car in handcuffs. He looked so small and scared. For the first time in his life, his money and his fancy things could not save him from his mistakes. A few months later, I sold that fancy city apartment for a lot of money. I used that money to turn the old farm into a special, warm home for old soldiers who had nowhere else to live. For the first time in my life, I wasn't working just to make money. I was working to help other people. I finally understand what happened. Margaret wasn't just giving me a house to live in. She was giving me my freedom back. Sometimes the people we work the hardest for are the ones who hurt us the most. But life always finds a way to show us the truth and help us find peace.